FTAI scale 5-5. 5-5.
North America, a continent filled with wondrous wildlife and landscapes. In the northwest quadrant of this majestic continent, the state of Idaho has a wide assortment of scenery and wildlife. Southern Idaho is home to the Craters of the Moon National Monument, and it borders Yellowstone National Park. Both of these areas have been formed and shaped by volcanic and geothermal activities. They are less affected by human civilization than in privately owned areas. The Craters of the Moon National Monument is a large expanse of lava fields that was formed by volcanic activity thousands of years ago. Scientists believe that the most recent volcanic activity occurred around the time of the Roman statesman Julius Caesar, about 2,000 years ago. The lava fields and underground caves have been described as a harsh landscape of many surprises.
Craters of the Moon is a very large place. It's over 750,000 acres. It's about the same size as Rhode Island. And one of the reasons why we have a diverse amount of wildlife here is because of the landscape, because there's many different habitats where animals can make their homes. Like the lava is what Craters is famous for. But we also have sagebrush steppe, we have grasslands, we have a small riparian area, and in that area, the northern part of the park is where we have the larger animals. But we have found elk, mule deer, pronghorn, and bear out in the lava, and even moose. So I never associated moose with such this desolate landscape of Craters of the Moon. One of the very interesting things in recent knowledge for the National Park Service is that I believe it was in the mid-2000s, 24 pronghorn were collared with GPS units, and what we discovered is that they were taking a specific route to migrate seasonally. So we have anywhere from 300 to 500 pronghorn that are in the vicinity of Craters of the Moon, and that's on the low end scale, so there's probably quite a bit more. What we discovered is their summer range is in the Pioneer Mountains, and in the winter they head up to Birch Creek where there's not as much snow. But what we discovered is the pronghorn have a very narrow path that they take. They skirt the lava. You may notice that the road also skirts the lava, so that can be an issue in terms of when they're migrating. And what we have found though is they migrate a very specific path that it's about 100 yards. We call it pronghorn path, that sometimes they even make this route, which is near Sunset Crater, they make this route single file. And we have amazing pictures of this that you can see online, but we were really excited to see that. And they've been using this for thousands of years, this same path. So another ongoing research we do at the park is we monitor caves and we're looking for bats. We do an annual hibernation count of bats. We have 11 species of 16 that are found in Idaho, so we have a pretty diverse amount of bats that are found here. And there is a disease that has affected bats. It has killed over 6 million bats on the East Coast and the Midwest. And just as recently as March 31st of this year, they've discovered it in Washington State. And so this is white nose syndrome. It's a disease caused by a fungus. It's a cold-loving fungus. It doesn't hurt people, but we can become vectors. And what I mean by that is we will spread it on our clothes, on our shoes, on our gear, even if you wash it. So when we ask for you all to obtain a cave permit before you go into the cave, it's absolutely free. We just want to help protect our bats. And what we want to know is that you're not bringing anything that has been in a cave in the last 12 years. And 12 years is key because that's when it was first discovered in New York. And it's challenging, I think, for people to recall what they were wearing when they went to Mammoth Cave 5 years ago. But it's also, I think we need to kind of change the way we think about exploring caves, and every single time you go into a cave now, you should just be aware of what you're wearing, because you just never know where the next case of white nose syndrome is going to be discovered. That sometimes the mortality rate is over 90%. So having bats in your backyard in the ecosystem is great because it cuts down on the amount of pesticides that farmers have to use. So not only is it good for the environment, but then you know, you can have food that's not has as much pesticides in it. Bats are just incredible too in that they are creatures of the night. I would hate to think of a world without bats.
In 1872, Yellowstone became the first national park in the U.S. Yellowstone Park is a hotbed of geothermal features, including geysers, springs, and mud pods. Meadows and forests provide a home for 67 different mammals and 150 species of birds. Large mammals in the park include bighorn sheep, bison, elk, moose, mountain goats, mule deer, pronghorn, and white-tailed deer. There are also grizzly bears, black bears, gray wolves, wolverine, and lynx. The Yellowstone bison herd descended from prehistoric ancestors, and it is the largest free-running herd in the U.S. It is one of the few bison herds in the U.S. that has not been made hybrid by breeding with cattle. The summer range for the bison is in the park's grasslands, and their winter range is in lower elevation areas near the park. The winter migration of the bison has created concerns among local ranchers whose cattle are at risk of being infected by brucellosis from the bison. The documentary film Silencing the Thunder describes the challenges of managing the large herd of bison in Yellowstone. It includes interviews with buffalo conservationists and local ranchers. A recent development in Idaho wildlife management has been the reintroduction of the gray wolf. Prior to its reintroduction in the mid-1990s, the gray wolf has been nearly eradicated from the western U.S., and it was listed as an endangered species. In 1995, the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service began reintroducing the gray wolf to Yellowstone and central Idaho. A total of 66 wolves were released in these areas, causing a complex set of cascading effects. In Yellowstone, the predatory pressure from the wolves caused a sharp decline in the elk population. The elk began to move around in smaller groups in the winter, a change from their prior sedentary habits. The willow stands along the rivers and streams began to flourish because of reduced grazing by the elk. Consequently, the beaver population grew. There have been numerous cascading effects of the increase in beaver dams and wolf-killed elk carrion in the park. Wildlife biologists say that an increase in biodiversity has occurred. Scavengers, including ravens, eagles, magpies, coyotes, and bears, are benefiting from the increased amount of wolf-killed elk. Ranchers and hunters have also voiced their opinions about the reintroduction of the gray wolf. The effects on livestock and the hunting opportunities have caused considerable debates. Since 2011, ongoing legislation and court rulings have caused frequent changes to the gray wolf status under the Endangered Species Act. Individual states are taking on a larger role in managing wolf populations. We are very fortunate to live in an area with abundant scenery and wildlife. Like the cathedrals of Europe, the landscapes of our national parks and monuments create a sense of awe and inspiration. Vast open spaces, canyons, and mountain ranges provide many recreational opportunities for campers, hikers, wildlife watchers, and visual artists. As stewards of these national treasures, we should take the opportunity to enjoy these places on vacations and weekend trips. We should also maintain an awareness of the complex interactions between wildlife, vegetation, and human civilization.